Hey guys, my name is Andrew, welcome to Conquest League Gaming. In today's video, we're going to be going over the Pioneer tier list for September 2020. So, there has been a good number of changes, not too many, but a good number of changes since our last video, back when we just had the big ban list, banning the big combo decks out of the format. So, we've had some time for the meta to kind of develop and see where it's kind of found itself, as you will. So, with a lot more tournaments under its belt, let's see what the tier list is looking at this time. So, before we get into the actual tier list, I want to go ahead and remind everybody that today's sponsor is going to be manatraders.com. So guys, it's expensive to play Magic, as we all know, and right now online is our only option with paper Magic being put on hold. If you want to stay competitive in today's meta, you have to be able to change decks whenever the meta shifts. So instead of spending hundreds of dollars on decks, I use manatraders.com, a service available for Magic Online players to rent any deck they want to for as low as $9.95 a month. Use it for leagues, qualifiers, whatever you want. They host a free tournament at least once per month with a cash payout up to $15,000. And if you want in on the savings and try out some new decks, or any of the decks we're going to talk about in this video, check the link in the description and make sure to use the code TLG33. That's TLG33 when you sign up, and you'll get 20% off on the first month. So yeah. With that being said, let's go ahead and get right into the list now. As you can see, I have trimmed it down a little bit because I realized having tier 0, like in the last one, it's just pointless unless there is a tier 0 deck, which, you know, honestly, we'll include that when it happens, and hopefully it'll never happen. But and then I've been really kind of stuck trying to fit everything into 5 tiers. Really, there's only 4 that really matter. Tier 1, 2, 3, and everything else. Tier 1 being the highest and everything else being the lowest. So, with that said, yeah, let's just get right into the deck. So, let's start with what I believe is the best deck in the format right now, which is very surprising if you watched my last video, which is gonna be Reclamation. Now, this is a little different from the one that I was talking about last time. Last time I was talking about the Simic build, which was very reactive. They weren't really doing anything. They were trying to just counter your opponent's stuff and, you know, play some big Shark Typhoon tokens and win the game. The problem with that is that it's so reactive, and you're not really getting anywhere. You're just kind of treading water and then dying later. So what people have found out is that if you just played what was successful in Standard, the Teamer version, it's just infinitely better, especially when you have Expansion Explosion that's just as good in Pioneer as it was in Standard. I mean, this deck is just incredible, and I'm surprised people hadn't tried it before. Well, I guess you could argue that the combo decks would have kept this one out, but at the very least, this was a big change that I did not see coming. I thought maybe people had tried the Teamer version and they went to Simic just to try to do that, but man, this Teamer version's awesome. I mean, really, really good. So definitely look out for that, and definitely have your disenchants, because you definitely need to answer Wilderness Reclamation, because as we all know, doubling up your mana in Magic, even in the older formats, especially in the older formats, is just too good. So, with that said, that's why I have it in Tier 1. So, the next deck we're going to talk about is going to be Junt Sacrifice, and I'm actually going to keep this at Tier 2. So, Junt Sacrifice is very similar, like I said, to the Standard decks. You know, I guess Pioneer is where all the old busted Standard decks go. But what's really cool about the Junt Sacrifice deck is the ability to just quickly kill your opponent on the stack. You got your Woe Strider, you got your Mayhem Devils, you know, your normal Aristocrat style of plays. It's really good against Wrath, which is, you know, what most people are playing when it comes to control. It's just hilariously good. I don't know what else I can really say about it, because if you think about it, right, a lot of these decks, most of the cards came out recently, so they were recently put in Standard. So, I mean, if you've seen the Standard version, I mean, I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. So, definitely check this one out. Honestly, I think this is getting better. This deck is going to get better over time, as more Aristocrat style cards are being printed, and people having to bring in the wrong removal. I mean, honestly, Graveyard Hate is good against it, but it's not the end of the world. And that's what I love about this, is it's a graveyard centered deck without having, you know, hard losing to Rest in Peace and things like that. So with that said, that's why I have Jund Sacrifice in tier 2, at the top of tier 2, by the way. And then we have this. So this was kind of hard because I wanted to put Azorius Control and Esper Control kind of in the same ballpark, but I'm going to put it at tier 2. I don't think it's quite good enough to be in tier 1, but I still think it is the control deck to play right now. If you like the draw go style of gameplay, definitely one or the other. I think Esper's a little better, but they're so close. I'm just going to put them together here. It's just the premier control deck. You know how it is. You got 5 fairy, 3 fairy. You know, you got your counter spells. You know, absorbs. You know, you know the deck. So really, there's not too much to talk about it. It's the same old as usual. So that's why I have it in tier 2. And then we're gonna go into a mono black aggro. I'm gonna put this right on the end of tier 2. I think this deck is not exactly what you want to be if you want to be, you know, trying to get under a lot of these very fast decks. But at the same time, I think that it just has enough interaction with a lot of the spell-based decks at the top that it can compete regardless. So Rankle's still good. You know, you got Knight of the Ebon Legion, you got Thoughtseize, Fatal Pushes, and you know, it's just mono black aggro. I'm sorry I've been having to repeat myself, but it's just the same old. You know, that's the thing about these tier lists when it comes to older formats. A lot of these are just repeats of the same stuff over and over again. So that's why I have it in tier 2. And then we got Spirits. This one actually makes me kind of sad. This is going to be in tier 3. Honestly, I thought the shift to Azorius with Lofty Denial being introduced into the format, I thought that would be solidify itself as the top reactive aggro deck. But honestly, I think it's a little tough to play Spirits when people are going way above you. We're gonna be talking about a bunch of other decks like Niptolite and like Wilderness Reclamation, that they're doing things that even if you get them low and you're able to tempo them a little bit, you expansion explosion them one time and the game's over. You resolve miss it and the game's over. You know, and I feel like what they need is either to come faster or they need something else. They need to have a spell queller be really, really good. And I don't think spell queller is honestly that great right now. You know, a lot of these teamer builds are built very reactively while also having this big finisher. And when you're putting 2 reactive decks back together, the one that is doubling their mana is always going to come out on top. So that's why I have it at least right now in the tier 3 slot. So then we have Jeskai Luca. I'm in love with this deck. This is very similar to another banned out standard deck. So Jeskai Luca is very interesting. You see, it's very similar to the standard version where you're in the end you're trying to play a Yorion, then sacrifice the Yorion, get a Agent of Treachery, steal all your opponent's stuff. But what's a little different is that in Pioneer, you can be a lot more consistent now. And honestly, with the big combo decks out of the format, I just see this deck being mostly unpunished besides the other top tier decks. Sure, you might have a hard time against Control, maybe, but that's kind of the thing, is that every single thing that you play just needs to be answered. Luca needs to be answered. Agent of Treachery, if you resolve an Agent of Treachery against almost any deck, it's just over. And though you will struggle against something like Mono Black Aggro, which can just kill you way too quickly, I think it's just too consistent, even at an 80 card build, to see itself at the top of the standing. So that's why I have Jeskai Luca in tier 1. The next one we're going to talk about is Winota. I still think that this deck is super good, but it's just people aren't playing it right now. I don't know what it is, why people aren't playing in it. I think Angrath from Marauders, coming off the top from Winota, is still super powerful play, and I don't know. I'm really not sure why people have it aren't playing it as much as they used to. But I'm still kind of high on the deck. I think that if you want a kind of tier 3, rogue-ish strategy, and you want to go up against the top tier decks, I would look into Winota. It seems like people aren't sideboarding for that early removal, that very specific removal that they need to stop those tokens from turning into Angrath Marauders. So definitely watch out for that deck, and that's why I have that one in tier 3. And then we have Rakdos. This is like Rakdos mid-range, Rakdos aggro. Some people are also calling it Rakdos Pyromancer. I'm going to probably put this in the tier 3 as well. I'm not too convinced about it. Every time I played the deck, it just felt... It wasn't fast, but it wasn't going over the top either. And I feel like right now in the Pioneer meta, you need to be one way or the other. Either you're going under super fast or you're going way over the top. You gotta go one way or the other. And honestly, this mid-range kind of strategy is just not working out against these mana doublers and cheating, Mage and Treacheries into the battlefield, and, casting huge creatures like, and Ulamogs and stuff like that. Like, it's just not happening. So, that's why right now, at least, Rakdos Pyromancer is going to be in the tier 3 slot. Then we're going to talk about vampires. This is going into the everything else, and this just makes me sad. I thought that the introduction of a Silver Smoke Ghoul would have really propelled this deck into a higher tier of the format, because you basically have an infinite Lightning Helix with your Sorin on the battlefield. But honestly, it's kind of the same problem as Rakdos is dealing with. You got people going over the top, doing things that are way better than you are. If you're wanting to play a more aggro strategy, honestly, Mono Black is just infinitely better. So honestly, it's really just a inferior version of the same strategy that Mono Black is doing. So you might as well just not restrict yourself to just vampires. Just play the good one, which is Knight of the Ebon Legion, and then play Mono Black aggro. So with that said, that's why I have it in the everything else. Then we're gonna have one of the best decks of the format right now, and that is gonna be mono green Planeswalkers. It's also mono green Devotion. It's playing Vivians, it's playing Karns, wishing to your sideboard for big stuff, having your Nykthos, getting a bunch of mana, and just dumping all that into a big finisher and winning the game. I mean, it's really as simple as that. What's also really cool, it's very flexible because you have your Wish sideboard. You can really get these nice silver bullets that can completely destroy your opponent. And honestly, I really liked this before the bannings, and yes, it was playing Walking Ballista, and losing that did hurt, but honestly, losing Walking Ballista really didn't affect it as much as the other Walking Ballista decks really needed it. So I think that it definitely right now, especially in comparison to the other decks, is just another example of what happens when you have a Nykthos putting a bunch of mana. As you can see, the top tier decks are kind of have that same strategy where, Willow Reclamation doubles your mana. Luca cheats on mana by cheating big creatures into play. Same thing with mono green Devotion, or whatever you want to call it, mono green Planeswalkers, where you're cheating in these sideboard cards that your opponent's not going to have an answer for, and just completely destroying them in one big bomb. So yeah, that's why I have our mono green Devotion, mono green Planeswalkers in tier 1. And then we're going to go to Dredgeless Dredge. This one really just fell off. I think honestly, I think what really happened is that a lot of these decks, like I said, are either going way too fast or going over the top, like we said about these other decks. But more importantly, the Dredgeless Dredge isn't exactly as the name would imply. It's more like a graveyard mid-range deck. And honestly, if you're using the graveyard, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, you have to be fast. Like, the Dredge in Modern is so good because it can just put like 10 power on turn 2 and just cheat all those creatures into play. But because you don't have that, you're having to go slow, one creature at a time. Maybe by turn 2 you hit a Narcometer or 2, and maybe you get a Creeping Chill. But honestly, you're not seeing the kind of milling that you're gonna see with some of the dredge decks that you see in Modern. So honestly, I can't really justify putting it any higher than everything else. So, and the next set we're going to talk about is going to be Orzhov Auras, and I'm going to put this in tier 2, but towards the end of tier 2. I was going to put it in tier 3, but honestly, I really like the deck. It plays a lot of really good enchantments. It can use a graveyard, but not reliant on it. You can recur your resources with Loris, being able to play those same enchantment creatures and enchantments over and over again. I mean, it's just a really solid aggro deck, and it can be kind of hard to answer because, you know, you don't exactly want a lot of disenchants because it's not getting rid of the creatures, but at the same time, you want to be able to answer their graveyard as well, because, you know, you can blow up, you know, your big, you know, Stonecool Serpent, but then again, you can just play Loris and bring it back, you know? So, it's kind of hard to answer, but at the same time, I think that in the end, it's one of those things where, you know, you're not as fast as Mono Black aggro, you don't have that same interaction, but also at the same time, you're not going super over the top of everything else. You're kind of in that middle, but you do it really well. You really do that mid-game kind of, you know, scrappy kind of combat, and I think that does really well right now. So that's why I have Orzhov Auras in tier 2. And the last deck I want to talk about is going to be a deck that I thought was going to stay at the top of the list, but is kind of fallen to the end of tier 1, and that is Niv to Light. Niv to Light, my goodness, is the best fair deck in the game of Pioneer right now. It is the best. Being able to resolve a Bring to Light into Niv Mizzet and drawing on average 4, maybe even 7 cards just puts you so far ahead of everything else, especially with the amount of silver bullets that just auto win you the game. Honestly, I don't know why you'll play any other fair deck. You know, you would just, you know, and with the amount of consistency that we're getting from the lands, 5 colors works almost better than a lot of these other options. So if you're wanting to play a mid-range deck, like I've said now, and like I said in the last video, I super think that the best deck right now in the fair area is going to be Niv Mizzet, Niv to Light. So, with that said, that concludes my tier list. So, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really do appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. And do remember to check me out in the description. We're going to have on ManaTraders.com for 20% off of your subscription, TLG33, a discount code that you would want to use to sign up and save some money. And every single account really matters. So, I would really appreciate it if you at least give it a try. So, yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.